0. And so I think what we should be seeing is that you have ups and downs a little bit, but it's always on an upward trajectory of growing closer and closer together. And I think that is true to life in a lot of ways of relationships. And so as we work through this, again, the heading that I have given to this section is that they are resolving difficulties and waiting patiently. And now we have a point of, after we've seen the zeal of the bridegroom to pursue and his wisdom to invite her into that relationship, that he is desiring to bring her into this place of protection where there has been separation. Now she is going to respond. Now here is where there's a little bit of debate, and you can see that I put a question mark after the Shulamite here, because some believe that it's going to continue with the beloved speaking. Some believe that it is others speaking to the beloved and the Shulamite. And I'm going to suggest that this is actually the Shulamite who is speaking. This is one of the, most of the time it's pretty easy to tell based on the context or just even the gender of the words that are being used, who is speaking and to whom that person is speaking. But in this case, we have them say, this person saying, "Catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, for our vineyard is in bloom." Now, here's where the difficulty comes, is that we have the us, and we have to figure out who the us is, but then we also have the command, catch. And it's not a you individual catch, this is a you plural catch. And so we have someone speaking to multiple people and saying, "Catch the little foxes for us." Now, before we get to the meaning, I want to suggest why I think that it is the Shulamite who is speaking, that she is responding to her beloved after he has said, basically, "Come away with me," and he has said that he loves her and that in the hiding place of the mountain crags, let me see your face, so on and so forth. That this is an invitation to be together, finally. I think she is speaking to him and to everyone else who is listening and saying there needs to be a removal of these foxes. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But what pushes me to the interpretation that this is the Shulamite speaking to those who are listening to remove the foxes for them, for her and her beloved, is because of that image of a vineyard. Now, the vineyard image is going to be used throughout the book of Song of Songs, but I want us to just look at the other occasions where we have this word vineyard. So if you have your Bible, look with me in Song of Songs, and let's begin in chapter 1 and verse 6. Chapter 1 and verse number 6. Now, notice that because of verse 5, we know this is the Shulamite who is speaking. She says, "I am dark but lovely." Then in verse 6, "Do not look at me because I am swarthy, for the sun has burned me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me caretakers of the vineyards, but I have not taken care of my own vineyard." And here she moves, at least in the second part, to kind of figuratively that she is the vineyard and she has not been able to protect herself. Look down in verse 14. Again, it is the Shulamite who is speaking. "My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blossoms in the vineyards of En-gedi." And now again, she's using this figure of the vineyards of En-gedi, and she is bringing it into their relationship. She is the one who is speaking. Look at chapter 7 and verse number 12. Song of Songs 7 and verse number 12. Notice in verse 10, she says, "I am my beloved's, and his desire is for me." So the Shulamite is speaking. Then it says in verse number 12, "Let us rise early and go to the vineyards. Let us see whether the vine has flourished and its blossoms have opened, and whether the pomegranates have bloomed. There I will give you my love." And chapter 8 and verse number 11, and also verse 12, 11 and 12. Here we have the Shulamite speaking again. And she says, "Solomon had a vineyard at Baal-Hamon. He gave the vineyard to caretakers. Each one was to bring 1,000 shekels of silver for its fruit. My very own vineyard is before me. The 1,000 shekels are for you, Solomon. The 200 are for those who take care of its fruit." Now, we'll try to get into what each of these figures means as we get to them. But what I would note is that every time we have a vineyard, we have the Shulamite speaking. And so it is possible that this is the exception to the rule when we are back in chapter 2 and verse 15. But up to this point and hereafter, it is always the Shulamite who uses the picture of a vineyard. That being the case, I think she is using this picture to say, I have my own vineyard, and we are now trying to have our own vineyard, and we need to get rid of these foxes who would come into the vineyard. So that brings us to the question that I have on the sheet. This is number 2, first of all. Sorry, I should have kept us there. What do the foxes, or the little foxes, represent in the relationship of the Shulamite and the beloved, and why seize them? What do you think this figure represents?
I don't know if I'm on the same page, but it seems like it's those things in a relationship that maybe they're unresolved arguments, holding grudges, or being unforgiving, being selfish, uncaring. Those little things that, unless they're ironed out, can ruin a relationship.
Yeah, I do think that these are, as I put up here, destructive influences in the relationship. And notice that she says it's the little foxes. What do the little foxes do when they come into a vineyard? They go and they dig up the roots and destroy any possibility of it blossoming and growing. And I think she is saying, here, we are trying to create a vineyard together. We are trying to create this relationship. We need to remove any of those little things that might destroy that relationship from the roots up. We have to get rid of this. And so what she is doing is calling upon her beloved and possibly upon all those who are around, and she would include herself here and say, we have got to get rid of these destructive influences. They are going to destroy this relationship. Now, Brother Sam has already kind of highlighted this, at least given us some illustrations of it, but I'm going to open it up for some further discussion. When you get to number 3, what foxes or little foxes, that is destructive influence, damage romantic relationships today, and how can couples deal with them? Any thoughts on that?
We could have what you might consider to be legitimate obligations or legitimate duties that come to us or that we have to take on in life that we just have to make sure don't take up too much time, take up too much of our attention. And so learning to manage those things so that they do not inhibit or destroy the relationship.
Very good. Any other ideas?
You know, to resolve those issues, oftentimes we've got to learn and practice forgiveness, because we're all going to sin against each other, even in our relationships. And I know personally, often, most times, when there was issues between Connie and I, it was because of my selfishness. When I started thinking about self rather than, others. And so you have to weed those out personally in order to flourish a relationship.
Very good. So one part of the resolution is taking care of our own heart issues. What else might it involve?
Your peers, your close friends. If you think about these two as Solomon, a king, and the Shulamite woman of lower stature, there could be a lot of talk and influence by others saying, trying to distract them or deter the relationship. So there could be a lot of, potential influence that they needed to tamper down and not listen.
Very good. Excellent. Any other thoughts?
You have the little foxes. If you think of that figure, you see something that is aggressively coming in and trying to destroy. So it could be other people coming in and trying to destroy the relationship.
Yeah. I haven't looked at recent statistics, but I do remember hearing some time ago that Besides finances, usually in-laws was one of the primary reasons why people got divorces, at least in the top 5, I think it was, of problems with family. And so there are those kinds of those issues, so contentions, family issues, desires, all these things need to be brought into check. There is individual evaluation we have to do. There is sometimes evaluation we need to do toward the other in that relationship. And again, since she uses this plural command, you all catch the foxes for us, I think she is also saying that others need to be involved, not only by just pushing them away if they're causing problems, but everyone upholding this relationship. And I think if we were to do a study just on the other people that are mentioned, like the maidens or the brothers later on, that there is always this push toward, at first there is, what is this relationship? Is there anything special here? To getting them on board with, this is something you all need to praise. You need to praise my beloved. You need to support this relationship. And that is what any couple needs to do, is to realize they have responsibilities together, individually together, and they need to help everyone else to see this is a relationship that needs to be supported. And of course, that is all within the confines of the context that we are looking at, where this is a lawful marriage between these two people who desire one another. Any additional thoughts on that?
It's sort of like what Stephen has said in weddings before, that the witnesses here are here to remind you of this covenant that you're making here today.
Yeah.
If something was to go wrong.
Yeah. Any vows that we make, whether it be baptism or marriage or anything else, the Bible usually puts that in the context of you're going to be held accountable for the vow that you are making. Any other thoughts? All right. Then, so again, we've started with he is pursuing her. She's watching attentively for him. And now when he expresses his love and his invitation for her to come away with him, then she says, we need to guard this. We need to protect this, because it would be easy for it to be destroyed before it even starts. So that brings us to the third point I want us to look at, is the Shulamite giving assurance of recognizing that her belonging, the mutual belonging, and her desire for their reunion. We're in a section where we have a lot of separation and reunion ideas, and so we're going to see that again. So here in verses 16 and 17, this is for sure the Shulamite who is speaking. It says, my beloved is mine, and I am his. He pastures his flock among the lilies until the cool of the day, when the shadows flee away. Turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountains of Bether. All right. In number 4, on page number 2, it says, what is the Shulamite communicating about the relationship in verses 16 and 17? So when you read these verses, what do you think she's trying to say?
Exclusivity.
Exclusivity. Yeah. You want to expound on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, number 1, 1 Corinthians 7, let every man have his own wife, and every woman have her own husband. So there's that, but also probably a closeness and desire to cling to one another. And then, of course, we could add to that, in exclusion of all others.
Yeah, there's probably a reason this verse and the ones like it are the most quoted or most cross-stitched verse of the verses of Song of Songs, because this is the ideal. This is what people want to see in a relationship: is I'm my beloved's, and my beloved's is mine. So that is the picture. And so as she has just said, hey, we need to protect this relationship. Now she speaks about we belong to each other. Now, not in some kind of hallmark, lovey-dovey, just purely emotional and physical kind of idea. There is a deeper connection that we've been seeing all the way through the first couple of chapters here. And so this is a mutual belonging. which tells us this is not just the mutual longing that we saw in the first section, but this is a mutual belonging to one another. And of course, this is fulfilled in the vow where one pledges oneself to the other and the other pledges him or herself to the other. And so we have this picture of we now belong to each other and to no one else. Again, exclusivity. But there has been separation. He is pasturing his flock, and then she is calling him to turn and be like a gazelle or a young stag. Now that should remind us of something. If we look back in Song of Songs 2, verses 8 and 9, you remember what it said? The voice of my beloved, behold, he is coming, leaping on the mountains, jumping on the hills. My beloved is a young gazelle or a young stag. Behold, he is standing behind our wall. He gazes through the windows. He is peering through the lattice. Now, when we talked about that before, what did we say? Why does she use that figure of her beloved being like a deer, a buck? All right, speed, intensity, jumping over the mountains. And her eyes are looking to the mountains, watching for him. Now she is using that same figure and saying, though there has been separation, because as a shepherd, he has to care for his sheep, she is now calling him back. Be like you were before, jumping over the mountains, coming to me, come back to me. Why? Because we belong to each other. And so where there was separation, there is also that longing. There is debate on the expression until the cool of the day when the shadows flee. Some think that that is evening. I tend to think that that is the morning. So we've had a night of separation as he has been shepherding his flock, as it were. And now she's calling him back as soon as the day dawns and all the shadows go away. Come back and come to me. Now, I think she's going to extend that because the very next section is going to talk about how she's been all night, separated from him. And so now she is using this figure of, I want my shepherd, my beloved shepherd, to come back to me. He has been away, and now he can turn and he can come with the same intensity and passion, running over the mountains, coming back to me, his beloved. Any additional comments on that? All right, so moving on then, we have this picture of the separation again. And here we are focusing in on what the Shulamite is feeling in this time of separation. And again, as I've said before, this is poetry. I don't think we should try to find a literal historical event for everything that she says, but poetry is the expression of emotion and the expression of the relationship. And so I think we have here, there were no doubt actual nights when they were separated from one another, but I think she is also just picturing what it's like in the separation, where it's in the darkness, it's not in the light, and we are away from each other. And if this is in the courtship time, there's this picture of we are not at a place where we are together and where we can be without separation. And so there is anxiety. Just as she has had confusion and doubt early in the relationship, now she has the anxiety that they are separated. And so let's read verses 1 through 3 and see how she describes this separation. All night long on my bed I longed for my beloved. I longed for him, but he never appeared. Then she speaks, I will arise and look all around through the town and throughout the streets and squares. I will search for my beloved. Now you have narration, what happens. I searched for him, but I did not find him. The night watchmen found me, the ones who guard the city walls. She speaks again. Have you seen my beloved? Now we'll continue with the rest of this picture in just a moment. But she has just said, hey, as soon as the day dawns, come back to me. Now she is describing the night. All night long, I have been longing for my lover, and he never appeared. So she is saying, I'll get up, I'll go, I'll try to find him. Now, this is turning things a little bit, because before this, he has been the one who has been like the stag, who has been pursuing her, has run after her when there was separation. Now she is saying, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to get up and I'm going to try to find my beloved. So I think we have these pictures in order to show both of them are pursuing one another, and they don't enjoy the separation, but we're going to see that she is unsure because she cannot find her beloved, and they cannot enter into full relationship at this point. Now, when it talks about the night watchmen who guard the city walls, this could literally be talking about her staying in Jerusalem and Solomon being separated from her. That is a possibility. Another possibility is that just as we've been using figures throughout all of this, we're going to see in just a little bit, or in a couple of lessons, I guess, that she is in some ways described as a wall, and this is a picture of protection, and thus there is separation in their relationship. And so you have these guards who are protecting the relationship. She's going to use the picture of her brothers having protected her a little bit later in this song. And so I think there may be a little bit of figurative idea here where there's still separation in the relationship. They have not yet been married. We see that in chapter 3, where you have the wedding procession and they finally get married. But at this point, there's still separation. They have not entered into the full covenant relationship. They are not spending the night together. And so she is wanting to see her beloved, and you have these walls that are separating them, and she is looking for her beloved so that those walls can be broken down and there are no separations between them anymore. I think that's how we're going to see the rest of it, so that it gets us ready for the wedding when they are finally together. But I had the question here, what insecurities does the Shulamite experience before marriage? As you read through verses 1 through 3, and we might even, we'll hold off on number 4. We'll just answer the first part here from verses 1 through 3. What kind of insecurities is she feeling?
Anxiousness, fear, loneliness.
Yeah. Fear, loneliness, anxiety. Why is she feeling that?
Because of separation from the one she loves.
Yeah. She has just said, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. My beloved is mine. She is saying, we belong together. We belong together all the time. But we're not. We're not together yet. And so there is this little bit of fear, as it were. Now, I would point us back to verse number 16, where it says, he pastures his flock among the lilies. She has described herself as a lily. She has said that there are various potential maidens out there. And so I wonder if there's a little bit of anxiety of, he is out there doing his work. There are plenty of opportunities for him. He has pledged his love to me, but we're not together. And so now she is saying, I need to find him. We need to be together. I need to see him again, because she does have that fear of, until our relationship is secure, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we are. And he's going to prove his faithfulness to her a little bit later. He already has spoken it. He's already shown it in some ways, but she is still feeling that anxiety. And I think that is true of various relationships, especially whether married or unmarried, is that there can be those anxieties. There can be those fears. And of course, loneliness, we could add into that as well. And so she's feeling that. Any additional things you see here that she is experiencing and trying to communicate in this language? This poetic language? All right, then let's keep reading, because we get the rest of the story, as it were, in verse number 4. And she says, scarcely had I passed them, but when I found my beloved, I held on to him tightly and would not let him go until I brought him to my mother's house, to the bedroom chamber of the one who conceived me. So he has been the one who has jumped over mountains to come back to her and invite her to him. There's still separation. So she has gotten up in the middle of the night to go and to find him. She's gone past those things that might hinder the guards of the city who have not seen her beloved, and she finds him. and she embraces him. And so she has jumped over the hindrances, just as the beloved has jumped over all hindrances in their relationship up to this point. She embraces him, that is, she seizes him and says, we belong to each other, and now we must be together. And then she gives a picture of intimacy. This is a picture of of the sexual relationship. I don't think they have entered into it yet, but she is saying, I'm going to hold on to you until I bring you into my mother's house, the bedroom chamber of the one who conceived me. If we look at chapter 8 and verse number 1, Song of Songs 8 and verse 1, notice how she uses family language to describe the intimacy that she desires to have with her beloved. Oh, that you were like a brother to me, who nursed at my mother's breast. If I found you outside, I would kiss you. No one would despise me either. I would lead you and bring you into the house of my mother, who used to teach me. I would give you spiced wine to drink from the sweet wine of my pomegranates. Let his left hand be under my head, and his right hand embrace me. And so here she is using this language of a brother and sister. Why? Because it seems that at this time you did not necessarily show that kind of affection between a husband and a wife publicly. And yet, if you were to kiss your brother, not in a sexual way, you could show that kind of public love in a family relationship, and no one would bat an eye. But it was seen as unbecoming to kind of demonstrate that kind of love in public. You see a picture of that, for instance, with Isaac in Genesis, where they are alone, and then the king sees, and he says, oh, now I know what kind of relationship that you all have. But the picture of the mother's house, the bedroom chamber, look in, we're not going to look at it now, but Genesis 24 and verse 28, also 24 and verse 67, Ruth chapter 1 and verse 8. Whenever it talks about the mother's house, it talks about the bedroom. What it is remember how, let's just use one example, how Isaac, when he meets his wife, he takes her into the bedroom, the tent of his mother. That is where they have inherited that place. That is going to be the place of intimacy for them. So what she is saying is she held on to him and would not let him go until they came into the intimacy that was reserved for marriage. And so she is showing that kind of tenacity in their relationship, that they belong to each other and she's not going to let go anymore. There's not going to be any separation until they can consummate their vows. All right, any questions or comments on that? All right, so it should not surprise us then that something we've already seen comes up again, because what she is doing is pledging, we are going to be together. But then she follows up in verse number 5 with, again, wait for the right time. We saw that in chapter 2, and now she says, I admonish you, O maidens of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and by the young does of the open fields, do not awaken or arouse love until it pleases. Now, just as a little bit of review, what did we say this indicates back in chapter 2, now again in chapter 3? What does it mean not to awaken love until it pleases?
Not to engage until the time is right.
All right. And it's not just the physical love making that they're talking about. It is, do not try to stir up this love relationship, this intimate relationship that is more than just physical relationship, until it is the right time. And so he has been saying, now is the time. She has been saying, there's been some separation, and now she says, I'm not going to let go of you, that we're going to keep this relationship going until we can get to the proper place. And now she says, so we need to wait for the right time. And guess what? The next chapter, or in this chapter, chapter 3, we have the right time. They are going to be together finally as they have desired. Any questions or comments on that? All right, application question here, the second part of number 5 on page number 2, first number 5 there. What can we learn from the determination of the Shulamite not to rest until she finds her beloved and restores a safe and close relationship? How should we apply that?
Work into it. She's not willing to give in to these fears and insecurities and just let it go. It's something that she's willing to work for.
Very good. If you couldn't hear that, got to work for it. Got to put in that effort. What else?
It's, when the two come together, it's something you hang on to. You, no matter what comes your way, no matter what those little foxes are, you gotta hold on to that relationship and to nourish it.
Very good. And let me build on that. As I've said, I think this may be describing Solomon's first true love, his first marriage. Even if we don't have a specific record of a Shulamite in the historical records, I think we see here kind of the ideal picture of them belonging to one another, clinging to one another. And what we see is that Solomon makes a mockery of that later in his life. Because do you remember what the historical record says? He held on to these in love, and they turned away his heart from Yahweh. So he had what it was supposed to be. That they hold on to one another, they're going to build this relationship, and it's going to be an appropriate relationship at the right time, in the right way. And then Solomon is going to leave that behind, and he's going to use that same, he's going to cling, but he's going to cling to others, and it's going to lead his heart away from the Lord. And so we do see the negative side of how Solomon turns this, but here I think is the ideal of what it's supposed to look like in a godly relationship. Any additional thoughts there? All right, then we are going to move on to the next section. And I would label this as the wedding day and the wedding night. And what we begin with is the royal wedding procession. And this is going to be verses 6 through 8. And we do see we need to try to transport our minds back about 3,000 years, because while there is some overlap between modern wedding ceremonies and ancient ceremonies, there are some key differences as well. And so we kind of have to imagine this is an ancient wedding ceremony. And not only that, it's an ancient royal wedding ceremony. And so we have kind of there's even going to be more grandeur to this than there would be normal ceremonies at the time. In our introduction, we studied Psalm 45, at least read through it. And I think there we are seeing a parallel from maybe a slightly different side. That is a third party looking at this wedding procession and wedding of Solomon. And there is a praiseworthiness to that. There is a nobility associated with that. And we see this, but we see it now from the Shulamite's perspective. And so we have to kind of read slightly a little bit different, but what we're going to see is the majesty. We're to see the majesty of this procession. It is giving gravity and weight to what is about to happen. And there is nothing wrong with ceremony. And I think I am all for people not wasting their money and getting in debt because of a wedding ceremony. But at the same time, there does need to be something special, at least in our minds, about what is happening. There needs to be something sacred about what is happening when we are pledging to one another. And we see that in the fullest extent of what was humanly possible when you have Solomon, the wisest and richest man, about to marry this Shulamite woman. And so let's read verses 6 through 8. And here's the Shulamite speaking. She's going to be speaking for quite a while here. It says, "Who is this coming up from the desert like a column of smoke, like a fragrant billow of myrrh and frankincense, every kind of fragrant powder of the traveling merchants? Look, it is Solomon's portable couch. It is surrounded by 60 warriors. some of Israel's mightiest warriors. All of them are skilled with a sword, well trained in the art of warfare. Each has his sword at his side to guard against the terrors of the night. Now, we're going to pause there. And first of all, I'll just ask question number 1, and then I want to make a comment about the very end of this section. In the first question there on page number 2, under the wedding day and night, describe the royal wedding procession. So, in modern terms, what are we seeing? What is the Shulamite seeing at this moment in the poetry?
Just to sum it up in one word we've already used is majesty, but this business of smoke, like pillars of smoke coming up out of the wilderness, I get the impression that it's like it's so long you can just see it for days. And she uses the figures, it's not just any smoke, it's the figures of myrrh and frankincense. So there is both majesty and holiness, I think, bound up in those figures. It's not clear to me, he's being supported on this different words for it, litter, palanquin, portable couch, whatever the right term is there. But is it the warriors themselves who are supporting him and carrying him along, or does he have an entourage that includes not only the guys who were carrying him, but then we have 60 warriors in addition to that. So here we have a display of strength, not to mention the protection element that we've mentioned already, because of the way she describes it there at the end of verse 8. He's got a sword on his thigh because of the fear in the night, or because of the terrors of the night.
Well said. And with all that wealth and power, and maybe included with the columns of smoke, is also that there is an intensity of how fast they are going. And so many people moving quickly, trying to rejoin. But the last thing I want us to mention before we close out our study is that terrors of the night. Because what have we just been dealing with in the previous section? She is anxious all night long because of the separation. Now he is coming and taking away the terrors of the night. All right, appreciate everyone's participation.